did the Trump team manage to lead the campaign to victory in the 2024 presidential election? That's the big question. We will talk about the science behind the campaigns of the Trump campaigns this edition. And my guest is a campaign manager from the former Trump team, Sean Nottoli, a visiting fellow at the Danube Institute in Budapest. Sean, thank you very much for participating.
Thank you for having me.
And let's put the straight question immediately. What were the three major factors of the winning of the election in your perspective?
Well, first to clarify, I was a regional campaign director, just for the title. Second, the three major factors were really, first, the Democrats really not understanding what the American people want or needed and unwillingness to message to their concerns. Second is that the Trump campaign really built something that's, I think, is the most impressive campaign strategy I have ever seen. I have 10 years of experience running Republican campaigns, especially in deep blue areas that I've written about for the Hungarian Conservative. And the people who helped and worked and built this strategy really understood, what the American people want and how to work with and build a campaign that represents all Americans.
I see. Okay, can you name some of the areas, some of the counties you worked before the big election in 2024?
Of course. So I worked in Fairfax County, Virginia, which is right outside of Washington, D.C., arguably probably the bluest county in the United States. I worked as a director on a small local campaign there for a man by the name of Pat Harity, a small race for a local office called District Supervisor. It was an office that, where the district supervisor and their roles, they help determine local taxes, they keep roads running, they keep public libraries open, deal with schools. It's an important job, not as, big and prominent as president, but it's something that we need to do. But in Pat Harity's case, he happened, when we were running the campaign there, he was the only candidate in that race that was actually talking about issues that his office could actually do. Something I've noticed that Democrats do all across the United States is they like to always talk about issues that are sort of staple issues, whether it's trans rights, abortion, big important subjects that deserve to be talked about. But when a lot of these people run on the Democratic ticket for small local races, these offices that they're running for have nothing to do with those issues. The person who ran against us, he spent most of the campaign talking about gun ownership and Second Amendment and wanting to confiscate guns. And we were just sitting there and we would talk with Democratic voters, just be like, if you were running for state house or for Congress, that would be something to talk about. But we're talking about your local tax rates. We're talking about making sure that the roads are well maintained, stuff that's important for your life. Nothing of what they're messaging for actually affects the office that you're running for.
Sean, you're talking about the connectivity. I mean,
yes.
The connection with the reality. That
Correct.
was a mistake what the Democrats did, as I understand your words. But can you name two other factors that was a very integral part of the winning of Mr. Trump?
Well, you have to understand how we got such a huge victory, and it was very huge. We won every swing state. Though you have to understand that officially we lost by very razor-thin margins in 2020. I think in the state of Georgia, where I was, officially in 2020, the last time I looked, we lost by 10,799. Don't direct quote me on that. It was a very, very close election that we barely lost. And when I was going into these deep blue areas in Georgia, like DeKalb County, Clayton County, Henry County, all I really had to do was to help build up, flip enough Democrats to Republican just to overcome that 10,799 number. And when you look at, the steady changes in the voter demographics in these swing states, where every election people are becoming more and more conservative. And it's largely because of the connectivity issue I'm talking about, that we really capitalized with Democrats there, and it really resonated with them. Democrats in these deep blue areas were again relying on these staple issues, and not once were they talking about things that really mattered to Georgians, about being able to feed their families, not addressing inflation, not addressing, for the first time in working American politics, foreign policy became a big issue. And people were talking about our relationship with Europe. People were talking about the war in Ukraine and worried about getting dragged into a war. And we were talking to them about it. We were sitting there, we were listening. And the third point, and that goes with the listening, is we really engaged in community building. So if you'll let me go off on a little tangent here a little bit, what do you think of, or what do you think Americans think of when they hear the phrase "Make America Great Again"? What do you think?
Yeah, you're making it into.
Yeah, I'm asking you. What do you think?
I think America was a failing power during the Biden administration, and before that, maybe the Obama years, seeing what the Crimea, Russians did in the Crimea. I would guess that if we talk about the foreign policy, many voters of America expected the next leader to be a strongman and leading back to the mighty power of the former years of US. Maybe.
So that's admittedly probably part of it, but when we got together and we thought, what does make America great again from the American perspective? Most people, when they say, let's make America great again, they want an America where we can be Americans and talk to each other again. We've had such a really, really bad case of cancel culture in the United States, where, people who are conservative feel that they are not able to openly express and communicate and talk to people. They're not able to engage with their friends that are Democrats and leftists. And so when people say, let's make America great again, a lot of people I talked to came to realize they meant, let's make an America where we can talk to each other again. I know, from experience, I grew up in the 1990s, and my dad is a big, well-to-do Republican in South Carolina, where I'm from. And his best friend in the world was the chairman of the Democratic Party of South Carolina. And they would always laugh, get along. They'd have their debates in politics, but then they would move on and watch football together. That's the America that people wanted back, America where we can get together, we can have our conversations and talk, and then we can disagree amicably and be friends. So in the campaign, what we did was we worked to restore that sense of community. We had an open door policy with our office. People were dropping in all the time, just wanting to come talk. We were an open book, an open resource, openly engaging with everyone. And we helped build a sense of community amongst the people in these areas, in these deep blue areas like DeKalb County and Henry and Clayton, first amongst the supporters, and, felt them, made them feel at home, and help give them the tools to have those hard conversations and start taking America back and building a country to where, if we disagree with each other, that's fine, but we're still neighbors, we can still get along. That was a huge thing that we did in the campaign. I think that was a huge part of why we won this race. Yeah,
you are talking about the mentality and the political polarization of the American society, and I understand that flip side of the same coin, what we are talking about. I would suggest that let's talk about the issues first and the methods and mobilization in a campaign second. Okay. So, and actually you grabbed the idea, what I wrote down on my paper, a quotation from an expert after the election last year. If you are struggling to pay your rent or feed your kids, you don't have the privilege of thinking about things like LGBTQ rights or reproductive rights. Right. And the expert writes that the major issue of the election was economy, unemployment, and inflation, and the Democrats just forget the real skin issues of the people. Most of the people felt. Is it the essence of the winning?
Yes. So from my experience in Georgia, I would be driving around Atlanta, and I would be listening to the radio and listening to what the Democrats are saying. And it really wasn't until the last 3 weeks of the election that I would hear, economic messages coming from the radio. Before then, like, it was attack ads on Donald Trump. Before then, it was really just your standard, getting mailers talking about LGBTQ, a lot of Democrat interest groups just flooding the airwaves with, like, again, all of these other issues that are important, but when you're worried about if you're not able to feed your family, they become secondary issues. And you just can't win an election if you're going to sort of allow your messaging to be dominated by these other issues when the main one is economic and people are worried and scared. They're looking at the price of eggs, they're looking at the price of milk, they're looking at the price of groceries. They're worried that they're not going to be able to afford to feed their children. You're not going to win an election when you just wait till 3 weeks before November 5th and like, okay, now let's really start investing in economic messaging. Whereas on point, on the ground, the Trump campaign, we were constantly talking about what President Trump has done for the economy, what he's going to do for you. And most important, we were open to listening to what the voters had to say and communicate that up the chain.
And Sean, what I don't really understand, please just tell me that some before the previous elections, this kind of magic weapon of the Democrats, the identity politics, worked.
Yes.
And what happened during the last 4 years, or maybe the last 1 decade, in America way of thinking, that this weapon didn't work this time?
Well, this is something that I've actually written about that's been published in the Hungarian Conservative, where this sort of absoluteness, like this mentality of you have to embrace this ideology and you have to support everything the Democratic Party does or else it's starting to finally crack. People in America are fed up with this whole culture where they have to agree with absolutely everything the Democratic Party says, or else they're an undesirable and they're part of the problem. A real good thing that highlights this sort of situation is we had a Republican, she was originally a Democrat, representative in the Georgia State House. I believe her name is Misha Maynor. I write about her. She was a true Democrat. She was elected as a Democrat in the Georgia State House of Representatives, and she served, I believe, for 10 years. And there was one issue on educational vouchers that the Republicans put forward for, where the state would help parents pay for alternative educations rather than just sending them to public school. She thought, you know what, on this one issue, I think that's a good idea. The Republicans might be right on this one. With that one vote, she cast in favor of the Republicans. The Democrats went in full force against her, ran a smear campaign against her, shut her out of meetings. She could not do her job as an elected official simply because she disagreed with the Democratic Party on one issue. And because of that, she had to flip her status to Republican just so that she could get into meetings. So she was able to do her job as an elected official. And it's absolutely insane to think that this woman who has been a true Democrat, standing for democratic values because she's disagreed on one issue on education, that she's completely cut out from the community, and they ran vicious smear campaigns against her. And I think the American people realize the hypocrisy of that. And the Democratic Party fails to realize that everyone's intellectually diverse. They love to talk about diversity, but then they put everyone in a box and say that you have to be fit in this little box and you have to support everything that we do because you're in this little box. Whereas most voters, they embrace, ideas across the ideological spectrum, and President Trump just wants to take the best ideas and put them forward. Doesn't matter exactly where they came from. And we saw clear evidence of this when Trump was talking about, no tax on tips, and the Democrats are trying to steal that from him. Like, oh wait, that's a good idea. We should be doing that. And the American people are fed up of not being able to express themselves and not being able to live their lives without fear of political retribution.
And does it go for the minority groups as well? I mean,
Yes.
the Latinos voted for Trump, unprecedentedly big numbers. So what mistake did the Democrats make among these groups, the minority groups and maybe the blue-collar workers we need to talk about too in a Rust Belt?
So
What mistakes did they do?
the most important thing that I need you to walk away from this interview with knowing is all politics, whether it be running for office, running a campaign for someone for president or someone at state house or local level, or whether it's at international level, like with President Trump and Viktor Orban. All politics is human relationships. That's all it is. And when a person, a candidate, or a party fails to realize that, they lose, and rightfully so. One of the counties I was stationed in Georgia was Clayton County. It is majority, the ethnic buildup is Latino and African American. White persons are in the minority there. And we had such a huge growing of support. I believe overall, I think we grew President Trump's support there by either 1.4 or 2.6%. I don't remember exactly, but it was very noticeable. And people there were fed up with this whole, I have to vote Democrat or else I can't be part of my ethnic community. I have to vote Democrat or else I am an undesirable. They hate cancel culture. That was the largest driving force of seeing people who are part of minorities, who are flipping and becoming first-time Republican voters coming into our office. That was the number one driver, is just because I agree with the Republican on one issue here, I'm not part of my community, and I'm not I'm not a beneficial member of society. I'm an undesirable. That was really a huge driver that people just do not understand. And as long as it keeps happening, more and more people are going to defect from the Democratic Party to Republican.
Sean, thank you for sharing these. I guess we talked about the messages and the content of the campaign.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the format.
Yes.
Let's talk about methods.
Yes.
What methods did you use besides what you mentioned, connecting people with a very low-level connectivity? What was the main message? How did you build up the campaign? How did you reach different groups?
The main message of the campaign was that this was a campaign of everyday Americans for everyday Americans. If you had asked me, just 2 years ago and said, Sean, you're going to be helping run a presidential campaign. Tell me what you think it's going to look like. I would have told you, I would have imagined I would be wearing a suit and tie every day, working in an office, looking at analytics and stuff nonstop. And that was totally not the case with this campaign. I only wore a suit and tie 2 or 3 times the entire time I worked for the Trump campaign. And that was only when we had, members of the Trump family like Laura Trump come to the office, big people like that, where we're going to take lots of photos. Other than that, I was just wearing jeans and a button-up shirt. And I was just talking with normal people. And it's like, yeah, I have this fancy title of director, but I'm not above anyone per se. Like, you're going out knocking on doors for President Trump. We're in the same level. here. There's not really that much of a hierarchy. We're all just working together.
You said the regional field director. This is the
Yes.
official title what
Yes.
you had at that time.
Yes.
What was your responsibility if you mentioned this topic? What did you do precisely?
I would go, I would be the public face of the Trump campaign to the people in these districts. I would go and put on events. I would go talk to people about the Trump campaign and what we were doing. And it would be 3 or 4 times a week. We'd have people in the office to where it would be almost like an ask me anything type of deal, where it would be no limits whatsoever. We're going to give you a presentation, talk about Trump's plan for America. What do you think? And then if people were so motivated and they wanted to join us, then we told them how they could volunteer, how they can be beneficial to the campaign. We did traditional things, like getting people knocking on doors and making phone calls, because you have to do that, and engaging in voter contact. But we did it in such a way that we were focused on making it a real community building exercise and making it so that people were not enjoying being part of the campaign. They were enjoying being part of something that's bigger than themselves. And people truly felt that they were part of the solution. And I have to give a lot of credit to President Trump, because every Sunday we would have phone calls with him, with everyone who volunteers on the campaign. They would be able to join in.
So and personally?
Personally. And he would take questions from people.
So you personally could ask questions?
Yeah, there was opportunity for anyone, like a kid in, I think actually from Indiana, was it Indiana? Or I forget, just a kid who had just gone door knocking that day, got to ask a question, and President Trump responded. He's like, hold on a second, I'm switching because I'm getting on the plane. And it's like, he answers the questions. I mean, President Trump took us very seriously. He knows how important connectivity, and he stressed that, he's not the most important part of this campaign. It's the American voters who are the most important people.
And the most important question is what you wrote down in the Hungarian conservative periodical just some weeks ago. How did you turn the voters from blue to red in blue states? What was the tactic?
Before the Trump campaign?
Yeah. Okay. How did you do that? Because that was a huge success. I just quote one statistics here that I find it today morning, that Trump got 2% more votes in both red and blue, and even the swing states, than he did perform in 2020. And Kamala Harris' decline was like 4 to 14%. Comparing to the performance of Mr. Biden in 2002. So it's a huge difference. So what was the secret of the success?
So the people who know me, who went to school with me, went to college with me, worked with me, they know I'm a guy that likes to talk, and I like to talk with people who disagree with me most of the time. It's like I have a tendency for liking to surround myself with people who disagree with me, because I think we have better conversations that way. And really the secret is, just being able to walk to a group of people who are going to be openly hostile against you and just talk to them. Connectivity, like you brought up, just being a human being. That's really the secret there. Again, to harp on this, in America, we have such a drastic cancel culture where everyone's trying to shut down an opposing viewpoint the second they see it. When they see someone who won't back down and will be polite with them and be like, look, I understand you disagree with me here, but I think you're wrong because of this, but it's not personal, and I'm just trying to establish a human connection, it opens a door. And once I have that door open, I can plant a seed of an idea. And, 9 times out of 10, I'm able to get that person to flip from blue to red.
But was it enough, personally? I mean, there's a digital connection too.
Yes.
In a modern campaigns, actually, many say that in the 2016 success was part of what it was crafted by Jared Kushner, who used the algorithms, the personal targeted advertisement, political advertisement to special voting groups and etc. Right. Did you use the same method than 8 years ago?
So basically, what we did on my side of the campaign is we realized that people really aren't trusting digital messaging as much as they used to. They're not, especially people who might go to Republican, people who we got a sense of they might swing our way, even though they're Democrats. A lot of people just aren't trusting the news media and things that they see on their phone anymore. So there's obviously still a room for digital, and there always will be in political campaigning. In this unique instance, it was more so the human connection above all, of being like, I'm a human being in front of you, talking to you, giving you this information. That's really what.
But did you use the social media and media outlets and advertising? Anything? Usually
the campaign did, absolutely, of course they did, and major props to them. I remember there was a Biden had made a remark about how Republicans are trash or something like that, and President Trump was midair. He got with his team, and when he landed, they had a dump truck with Trump 2024 on it. And he was in there. It's like, this is dedicated to Joe Biden, like, yeah, we're trash and we're trash men. We're proud of it. We're going to fight for America. They were very, very much, on point. I have to give a huge props to the social media team on that. And when Kamala Harris, caught in her lie with stolen McValor, claiming she worked at McDonald's and she didn't, President Trump just brings some people. He goes and works a shift at McDonald's. People online and in person love it. I mean, literally all we had to do when it comes to social media and stuff, you have to look at what the Democrats were saying, and it's easy to poke a hole in it. And Donald Trump, just being who he is, would just be hilarious and would just say, all right, you claim to work at McDonald's, I'm actually going to go work there.
And if you see this personal appearance of Mr. Trump you mentioned now, if you see during the campaign there was a portraying of him like a decisive, far-right nationalist, unpredictable, unstable leader. That was the negative campaign of the Democrats on him. Mm-hmm. How, actually, not to mention the impeachments, not to mention the Capitol riot scandal or the felony charges and convictions, which is it was a stigmatic thing on him. How could he override of this stereotyping campaign against him?
Well, I mean, it goes back to the point to where Americans are waking up and realize just how biased the media is, and just how the left-wing establishment is just out to get him personally. There really is a sense amongst Americans that the Democratic Party isn't trying to attack the ideas and policies of President Trump as much as they are trying to attack the person of Donald Trump. And when people are voting for a president, they're voting for the policies. They're not voting for necessarily the person. There are so many people I talk to who says, you know what, I don't like him personally, but I completely support his policies. That's why I'm voting for him. And when you look at all these attacks, with the impeachments, the whole Russia allegations in his first term, saying that the Russians helped him get elected and he worked with them on it. Just the blatant disinformation our own media has spread about him. People were very open to giving him a chance. They've lied about this man for so long. He's the only one talking about issues that concern me. I'm going to give him a listen and see. And they listened, and they appreciated what he had to say, and they voted for him, and that's why he's in the White House today.
I see. Thank you for saying that. Finishing the interview, let's talk about the CPAC, because when this interview is out, the next day we'll start the big event in Budapest at CPAC. What is the significance, in your opinion, of this?
A CPAC?
Yeah.
Well, the significance of having a CPAC here in Hungary, I think, really alludes to the fact that we really are entering a golden age of relations between the United States and Hungary right now. There are several issues that I think the Hungarian people have identified that they can relate with Americans on, universal conservative values. And I think it's very telling that Hungary has sort of risen in prominence with the CPAC community as to why, such big names are going to be coming to this thing. You have like Michael Knowles, who's a big Trump supporter and prominent, conservative influencer in the United States, who's coming. You have leaders, congressmen. We're really taking note of what's happening here in Hungary. A lot of people say that Hungary is a problem child, but really we're beginning to understand, similar to how people say that Donald Trump was a problem, but Donald Trump turned out to be right on a lot of issues. People in Europe are starting to understand that here in Hungary, several issues where Hungary was seen as a problem child that they're historically being proven right on.
But why is it important for US? I mean, a 10 million population country, it's a small country in the middle of Europe, far from US. Why is it important for you? And the second, what can the experienced Republicans yourself learn about from the Hungarian government, achievements, and maybe the struggles?
Okay, so that's an interesting point you bring up, and it kind of is in line with what I'm researching here as a visiting fellow of the Institute. Like I said, a lot of people have said that Hungary is a problem child. The United States has issues with Hungary being part of the Belt and Road Initiative, or China. A lot of people don't like the fact that Hungary is open to Russian business in the country. The way that I look at it, and I look at politics in general, is that, we have areas where we disagree, but you're your own country. You've made your decision on things. We need to look at all the strategic opportunities that Hungary's relationships with the East offer us. In the same way that how Switzerland helped play an important role in American foreign policy during the Cold War, dealing with North Korea, dealing with the Soviet Union. I believe there's real opportunities where the United States should leverage its relationship with Hungary in order to make strategic gains with diplomacy in the East. Just as much as Budapest is becoming a gateway for the East into the West, it's becoming a gateway for the West into the East. And that's sort of what I've been researching and I'm working on here, is trying to identify those strategic opportunities that the United States and Western powers should exploit here in Hungary. And let's not forget, Hungary's not completely neutral. It's an ally of ours in NATO. It stands with us against Russian aggression in Ukraine. Hungary is a supporter of the EU and European institutions. And let's not forget, it is an economic powerhouse. I mean, America, last research, we had American companies that employed about 107,000 Hungarians here in Hungary. And Hungary is becoming a hub of like major manufacturing, electric cars, things like computer parts, things of that nature that are critical for not only European infrastructure, but could be useful for the United States as well. So just because a country is small, you shouldn't underestimate the value that country has diplomatically or in a business relationship. And that's something that I hope that my research will show for my fellow Americans.
Sean, thank you very much for your analysis. Thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
And your attention, I thank too. See you next week. Bye-bye.